What's going on, guys? Chris Dorsano here. Today I'm going to be doing an interview with Bill Allan from LTTV. Thanks for joining us, Bill. So today we're going to talk about the growth mindset, and it kind of goes hand in hand with my first video kind of going with goal setting. So he's going to kind of abbreviate a little bit on it and go into detail about what that's all about. So,
all right, Chris, so I'm going to say that this concept was actually shared at the high school where I work. Our principal found this book and wanted to share it, and the author was Carol Dweck. She authored this book about the growth mindset, and it basically explains the two ways that people tend to think and behave and live their life. There's the growth mindset and the fixed mindset. Now, one thing that people often get confused about is they start to think as they're reading this book like, oh, I'm fixed mindset, or I'm totally growth mindset. Nobody is totally one way or the other. We all have both, okay? So there are things that we have a fixed mindset about where we feel like this is how it should be and there's no reason to change it, and if we do change it, something bad will happen. Or this is something and we shouldn't risk doing anything, we shouldn't take chances. So we have a lot of fixed mindsets, and that's not all bad, but people have that approach. But it's all about a balance, right? So what you want to work towards is a growth mindset. And the idea behind the growth mindset is that you're open to trying new things. You're open to trying new things and failing at those things. And if you do fail, you don't just give up. And some people have that approach maybe from athletics or from their childhood. The idea of like, well, if at first you don't succeed, try again. What can be frustrating, though, is that if all you do is try the same thing over and over and you keep failing, that's like the definition of insanity, right? Like Sure. It can be very frustrating to do something over and over and over, and it can be demoralizing. So in the growth mindset, instead of just trying the same thing over and over until you succeed, it's more about opening your mind to other strategies. So maybe you want to set a goal and you try hitting that goal, but you can't hit that goal. Don't just give up, try another strategy, try a different way. Sometimes that means taking some risks. Sometimes it means overcoming fears. So what I found interesting about the book and about the whole growth mindset concept is that I felt like this was something that part of me had for a long time, even before I had a label for it. You know what I mean? Like there was a part of me that felt like with certain things, I had that open mind and I was able to kind of be flexible and adapt and to fail and not give up and not be frustrated and not be demoralized. So that's kind of the overview. And the idea is to kind of assess yourself. Where are you in your life? How much of your thinking is fixed versus growth oriented? Are you willing to make changes in your life? Are you willing to take risks? Are you willing to overcome your fears sometimes to pursue goals, or to just try new things for the sake of trying new things, to open up your experiences and open up your mind? I found it profoundly interesting too that this whole understanding of how we look at things in the world and how we behave and how we make decisions can be tied into not just setting goals in a myriad of different things, right? But also kind of how we interact with others. So sometimes we may be in a position where we want to try to do something. We want to try to connect with something or someone. Maybe it's in business. Maybe it's in our career path. Maybe it's just, recreationally. But whatever the case may be, we may be afraid of trying. And so overcoming that fear is a big step, right? Just like with any kind of goal-setting mechanism.
Sure.
Taking this big, scary dream and breaking it down into smaller steps and goals can sometimes be the way to overcome that fear. And you've talked about that before.
Right, so a lot of people, they get stuck on those little baby steps, and right before they're about to achieve that goal, they let themselves down. And like what you're saying is they need to go around those goals. They need to keep trying until they hit it, because there's multiple ways to get around those obstacles. So can you give us like a little example maybe about yourself, about how you hit maybe a blockade and how you got around it, and how other people could see that being, maybe they connect with it in a similar way?
Yeah, absolutely. So long before I learned about this book and about the growth mindset, okay, I was working as a production technician in video production for a big company, for Comcast. And it was a great job. I worked with great people. I was good at my job. I was really good at my job, and I was proud of how good I was at my job. And I had done all these little innovative things to make the work more streamlined and more optimized, right? So, but the one hang up was that the salary wasn't enough for me to move on to the next phase in my life, to be able to support a family. And my wife and I wanted to be able to start a family. And there really weren't any positions further up the ladder that would compensate me to the extent that I would need to be able to move on to that next step in growing my family. And so I became demoralized. I was bummed out. I was like, I like this job, but I'm not making enough money to do what I want to do for the next step in my life, you know? And I started to flounder. I was like a person drowning in the ocean. And I just started reaching for anything that could help me. I went to an auto dealership to apply to be a car salesman. I had no experience doing it whatsoever, but I got all the way to an interview, and the guy asked me, like, well, you don't have any experience in sales. I was like, yeah, but it doesn't matter. I'm really good at talking with people and convincing them to buy things. And the guy was like, oh, okay, but you know, it never went any further than that. I went to TruGreen Chem Lawn, and I met with a manager there to be a sales rep. And what was funny about that was like a breakthrough moment where this person who I didn't know and who really didn't know me met with me for an interview, looked over my resume, talked with me for a bit, and he's like, you know, you're kind of overqualified for this job. Are you sure you want to sell lawn service? You know, and I was like, I don't really have a choice. Like, my wife's, you know, we're starting a family, and I need more income. And he's like, well, I'll tell you what, take the weekend to think about it. And if you still want to work here, I'll hire you on Monday. And if you don't, I totally understand. And I was so grateful to that guy because I took the weekend to think about it, and I realized, like, I don't want to do this. You know, that might be something that someone else would enjoy, but I didn't want to do it.
Right.
And I called him back on Monday, and I thanked him for his time, and I told him how meaningful it was, you know. But I still felt lost and demoralized. I felt like I didn't know what to do. And my wife said to me, you know, you've always talked about going back to school to be a teacher, because my dad was a teacher. And I thought, yeah, but then I have to go back to school, and it's going to take forever, and how will I pay for the school, and then we're going to be in debt. And, you know, what was happening, Chris, is that I was making roadblocks for myself. I was making excuses. She suggested something that was true and very real, and I just put up walls. I put up roadblocks. I made excuses. Mm-hmm. And that was born out of fear. And really, it wasn't fear. It was like fear of the unknown. It was fear of how would I pay for it, and fear of all the question marks, instead of saying, hey, wait, this might be something that I would be good at. So I kind of blew it off for a while. And then maybe a month, 2 months later, I'm at my job. She calls me. She's like, hey, listen, one of these schools is having a free orientation session. You go there, you bring them your transcripts from college, they evaluate it, and they tell you, like, how you would enroll in this program to become a teacher. And again, I was like, oh, I don't know, where's it at? You know, I was making up. And so basically, thank God for my wife, because she kicked me in the rear and told me what I needed to do, and I went. Reluctantly, but I went.
She was a mentor to you in a way.
In a way, yeah. So I go to this orientation section, and they talk about the whole process, and the more they talked about it, the more at ease I felt with it. Suddenly, it didn't seem so impossible. And then they evaluated my transcripts. They got back to me, and the way it looked was like, I only had to take a couple classes before I was eligible to start the program. So that mountain that seemed so, you know, scary to me was not as scary anymore. So I embarked on this mission. It was like a light turned on, and all of a sudden I felt like, hey, this is something I could do. This is something I could be good at. And it's something that would help me meet my goal of being able to have the kind of compensation and salary where I could support a family. I started, while I was working full-time, I was taking night classes, and I got those done, and then I started in the program. The program was awesome. I learned so much about the process of being a teacher, about the science, the psychology, about the content-specific stuff. It was a lot of work. Because I was working full-time, taking these night classes, the load, because it was an accelerated program, like a 10-month program, was incredible. I mean, I was staying up till all hours reading. But as much as it was challenging, it was super rewarding. And the people that I met in that cluster, that group of students who stayed with me in each class, became friends, and we studied together, and we'd meet up to study, and we'd work on our papers together and do research together. And it became a really supportive network. And you know how that is, and that's something that you've touched on before, and I'm sure you're going to touch on again.
Sure.
Just like the mentoring relationship, a supportive network can be really crucial. And sometimes you can build that supportive network from people who you don't even know.
Right.
And there are people out there who want to help you as long as you're emanating that feeling of, I want to do this. See, people recognize it. It's not just floundering for help. It's, I've decided that I'm going to set a goal, and I might need a little help with that. And people will flock to you. You become magnetic. So that time went fast. And then it got to the point where I finished all the coursework, and I had to quit my job because I have to be a full-time student teacher. That, again, was scary. All these question marks were swimming around in my head. I was stressed out. I was like, how are we going to afford to live and pay our mortgage? I mean, I had a house by now and, car payments and stuff. But you know what? The ways come together. Like, we were able to find loans and student loans that could cover us, and help from friends and family, and just, just a bridge to be able to make this possible, so that it wasn't just this scary abyss, of the unknown. And I did the student teaching, again, incredibly challenging experience, but also really rewarding. And that experience also was a situation where I learned a lot. Sometimes I would try things and it would be a failure and it would blow up. And other times I would try things and take risks and it was a huge success.
But you were learning from those mistakes.
Absolutely. And that's the key to the growth mindset, is a mistake or a failure can be just as valuable, sometimes even more valuable than success. Sometimes when we do something and it comes easy for us, we take it for granted. We don't really think about it. We don't look introspectively into ourselves and ask ourselves, like, why was that so easy? We just take it for granted. But I think the most crucial thing is when something isn't easy for us and it's a challenge and we might even fail at it, but we learn from it, and then we grow in a different direction, we try new strategies, and then we succeed later. Sometimes that's more rewarding.
And I think that's what you were doing on your path, right? So you had all these odd-end jobs, you're doing things you weren't sure what were the right goal, the right path, but you were getting skills from every single one of these jobs, and each one of those skills, you put it together to combine for the career path that you eventually ended up in.
That's right. And Chris, I wanted to touch on this. Sometimes we don't know how all these paths are taking us through to where our big path is. Sometimes it's not clear. It's like you're in a forest and you come to a split in the road and you don't know which way to take. I always try to think, like, as long as I'm kind of feeling true about the path I'm taking, like this is a good thing for me, then you can't make a wrong mistake. Because even, you can't make a wrong choice, because even if you do make a mistake, you'll find your way back to the next path.
Have you noticed that because at different parts of your career, you're reaching these different goals, right? And you think maybe this is the end goal, this is where I'm comfortable, right? This is where people get comfy at. I found that it's like a hill too, where I get to the top of the hill, and I'm like, I think I'm at the top, I'm ready to go. And then I look and I realize, oh wow, there's a lot of bigger hills out there. I'm not even close to what my big goal is. But you can at least see from these different pillars as you're working your way up to these different obstacles that you're trying to get to.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know what? This is something we've talked about before, and I know you plan on addressing in some of your other videos, but we know that life is about what we're doing right now. Life is about the present. We can reflect on the past, but we can't change it, can we? We don't have a time machine. We can't go back and we can't dwell on mistakes that we made in the past and go back and fix them. We can only learn from them and go forward, always forward, right? And we could set goals for the future, but we have to be aware that we are in the present. This is our life right now. So you can change your life in the present like that. Now, it sounds easy, but really it is mindset. It's how you deal with the world around you. The world around people sometimes can be so overwhelming that they get caught up in this notion that, like, everything's against me. The world's against me. The man is keeping me down. Well, if you let it be that way, that's how it's going to be. I mean, it's a basic psychology thing. It's your perspective. I get frustrated. I'm not perfect. I'm a flawed human being. Some people say like, well, nobody's perfect. I like to actually flip it and say, I'm imperfect. I'm a flawed person. But I'm always working on learning from my mistakes and being better. And I'm always striving to be better. But we have to recognize that how we deal with the frustrations and the challenges in life are completely in our control. Like, it's not the world around us. Yes, people can be in really crappy situations and be very frustrated and feel like the whole world's against them. But it's how they look at it and how they deal with it. And I'm not saying like, oh, just put on some rosy glasses and pretend everything's okay. No, I mean like acknowledge the crap that you're dealing with, but then try to think constructively about how you could set goals and start to work towards a better life for yourself. Because no one can fix your problems. Your problems are your problems. And yes, people can help you, but ultimately how you look at things and how you deal with things and how you behave and communicate with the world around you and interact with the world around you is entirely up to you. That's why we all have our own will. We are self-determined. So, when I was in the teaching program, it was challenging. I finished up the student teaching. I got my degree. I was at the top of the little hill. I thought I was good, right? But guess what? I got my endorsement and my certification in the middle of the year. There were no jobs. I was subbing. I was trying to do freelance video, and I wasn't making ends meet. I had to go work in a restaurant. And I had lots of restaurant experience growing up in high school and in college, working my way through. I went to Red Lobster and I got a job. And again, the person interviewing me looked at my resume and they're like, you're way overqualified to be a server here. I was like, I don't care. My wife's pregnant and I need a job. They hired me like that. And I busted my butt and I worked really hard. And it was an amazing and humbling experience because here I was, a person with all of this, higher education under my belt now and all these certifications and endorsements to teach. And I'm serving Cheddar Bay biscuits at Red Lobster, right? It's very humbling. But it was there for me when I needed it to be. And you know what? I think if my pride had stopped me from doing that, I might not have been able to pay my bills. So again, I was faced with a situation that really sucked. And it came down to how I looked at it. I'm like, well, I could just be mad and struggle and feel like the world was against me, or I could go out and get this job and work my butt off and keep working towards the goal that I wanted, which was teaching.
And some people worry about the position that they're in. So they're in the shoes of the Red Lobster in your case, and they feel like, oh no, this is like where it ends, like this is where I'm gonna be the rest of my life. When you focus on that area in your life and you're struggling saying like this is gonna happen, it will become a reality, it will happen.
Right.
But it's the opposite way thinking of too. So if you're saying, I will not be here, I'm not gonna stay here, I'm gonna reach other goals, you'll make that a reality as well.
Exactly. We make our own realities. We make our own realities based on our mindset. A lot of people with a fixed mindset would say that they're stuck in this job. No, you're not. Nobody's stuck anywhere. Nobody's stuck anywhere. What sticks you in the job is you. You can change anything that you want if you set your mind to it and you open your mind and you have a growth mindset approach. Speaking of that open-mindedness, okay? So while I was student teaching as an English teacher, I met a colleague at that school who was in charge of the media program. And I had this background in video and film. So we got to talking, we had a lot of shared knowledge. He worked in the Chicago media industry, so did I. And at one point, he was like, hey, do you want to come down like after school and do like a little workshop or a seminar for my students? And I was like, I'd love to, And the guy's name was Bill Gutman, nicest guy on the planet. I came down, actually ended up doing this a couple times. I did like a lighting workshop and then I did something with like sound and interviewing for news. And it was fun. It was fun working with the kids. And it was great, being able to kind of offer those services, volunteer my services, right? Mm-hmm. And I thought nothing of it other than the fact that it was just yet another interesting experience. Months go by. I'm working at Red Lobster. My wife has the baby. Still working at Red Lobster. Still looking for jobs, pounding the pavement, calling people, emailing, applying online, everything. Nothing's coming up. I get a call from Bill Gutman, and he says, hey, one of the colleagues at another high school who I know is retiring, and there's going to be a job opening. I was like, really? What high school? He's like, it's Lyons Township High School in LaGrange. And I'm like, Bill, that's where I went to high school. I'm like, I know that guy. That's Bob, you know? So really long story short, Bill Gutman's reference for me to take that job came from the fact that I had done those little after-school volunteer workshop things. So what you put into the world is what you get back from the world, you know? I had no expectations. I wasn't doing that as a favor thing. But here's this nice guy who kept me in mind because I was a positive person and I made a good impression with him. He contacted me, I contacted the school, months go by, interviews, visits, all that stuff. I end up getting the job teaching kids media, which I did professionally for almost 10 years in film and television, at my old high school. What are the odds that that would happen? It's the best of all worlds. I get to do what I love with film and television and keep my skills sharp and learn new things constantly because I have to. I'm the teacher. I got to stay ahead of the curve. And I get to work with all these great kids and inspire them and teach them things about media, but also just about life. Like just try to be the best teacher slash coach slash mentor that I can be. And now I'm 12 years deep, and Chris, it's flown by. And I'm not saying every day at work is easy. And some months or some semesters are a lot harder than others. And it can be very stressful. But you know what? When you find a path that really fits and really draws in all these different life experiences for you, work isn't work. It's not drudgery. I go to work every day with this open mind, thinking like, what are we going to do today? What's the adventure? It's fun.
So
It's fun.
for people out there who are looking to get where you're at, that peak, that set that you've been working towards, a lot of times they're like worried, will I ever get there? Because everything feels like work.
Yeah.
Would you even say that your job feels like a job in general? Like it's more of a way of life.
Yeah, I mean it's a job in the sense that I put in, my average work week is 50 hours a week. Some weeks can be 55 or 60 hours a week, depending on how many productions we have. I think about my job all the time. It's a big part of my life. And I've actually had to pull back from that and refocus a lot of my priorities so that I have more balance in my life to include family, my wife, my kids, my friends, all of that stuff. Because we can't just be one thing. We're humans. We're not meant to just be one thing, So I think a lot of people out there who might be thinking about where they're currently at, sometimes the solution is a change, a major change, like a job change, a career change, right? Going back to school or going in for additional training or trying out for something new. But sometimes all people need, I think, in their life is something that they enjoy, and that doesn't always have to be like their job. It could be an additional thing that they do, right? So I have a close friend who got into yoga, and it changed his life. Like it changed his entire mindset. He had this like totally different, like calm demeanor. It just centered him more. He still kind of, is involved in his career, but how he looks at that career now is different based on this activity that he does recreationally. And by the way, he started to become an instructor. So that's how much that, if you asked him 10 years ago, hey, would you leave sales to be a yoga instructor? He would have laughed. But now he's doing that. And it's like when he found this thing, it was like he suddenly knew that this thing was going to work for him. Now, if you look at somebody who's making a lot of money in sales and they're willing to drop down in that income to do yoga instruction, you have to ask yourself, like, have they just lost their mind? No. Of course, he had to make a lot of adjustments to his lifestyle. But if you asked him today if he's a lot happier, yes, he loves doing what he's doing. It centers his mind and his body. And, he made this jump, but it's something that's rewarding to him. And it's something that, he's able to live off of his salary, off of the compensation that he gets. Mm-hmm. And sometimes that's another, that's growth mindset. It's thinking past like, I can only do it this way, right? A lot of people have been in a career for 20 years and they think that's all they can do. And I think that that's a very fixed mindset. You have to open up your eyes. Let me tell you one more sort of quick example. My dad I'm the youngest of 7, so my dad was pretty old when I was born, okay? He was a kid who was born in Chicago, raised half of his early life in Chicago, then sent off to live with his aunt and uncle and cousins on a farm in Iowa. He learned a lot about, city life, and then he learned about, country living. Then he was in the Army, and he was in World War II. After the Army, he worked on a dairy farm. He went to college. He was briefly a U.S. forestry ranger. And then kind of a major life shift, he got into, basically he became an ordained minister, initially an Episcopalian minister, and then he converted to Orthodox Christianity and became an Orthodox priest. Married, kids, all that stuff, right? Mm-hmm. Again, changed his lifestyle, left the priesthood, became a athletic director at the YMCA in Chicago. After doing that for a number of years, became a social worker in the late 60s, working in some pretty challenging areas like the Robert Taylor homes in Chicago, working with underprivileged people and trying to develop community relations there in the jobs program. So that involved mentoring other people who needed skill training, skill development, and networking, and basically like how to present yourself to get a job. Did that for a while, and then became a college professor, which he did for 25 years. After he retired from teaching college in his early 70s, he got reordained as a Unitarian minister. And also, along the way, he became a published author in that time. He did a number of, and by a number I mean like hundreds of community access cable television shows where he would host different guests and have topics of discussion. So, I mean, you think about all those things that guy did in his life. And I asked him, Dad, did you ever think that, did you know where you were going all the way? And he's like, no, I had no idea, And that's really what it's about. Like, life is what we're doing right now. We don't know where it's going to take us. We could die tomorrow. But, the point is be focused and be centered on where you are right now and in the present. Of course, set goals for your future. And of course, work towards those things. But just live life. Don't be afraid to try different things. If you fail at something, it doesn't mean you're a failure. It just means that it didn't work out this time. Try something different or try the same thing with a different strategy. And I think, like I said in the beginning, Chris, I read that growth mindset book and it resonated with me because it spoke to my life and to people that I knew. We all have some fixed mindset and some growth mindset. And I don't think anybody can eliminate fixed mindset. Fixed mindset isn't the devil. It can be practical sometimes.
Some people think it is the devil. It's those thoughts that come into our subconscious mind that are stopping us from moving forward in our lives.
Right, but we have a fixed mindset for a reason. Sometimes we've trained our mind to be fixed about certain things. I'll give you an example. I have often said that I could never be a saxophone player. Now, that's a fixed mindset. The reality is that if I took the time to start playing and I took lessons, over time, I might be able to play the saxophone. Would I be as good as John Coltrane? Would I be an amazing jazz saxophonist? Probably not. That would take a lifetime of work, right? But the point is that I decided that I'm not going to be a great saxophone player. But we all have a fixed mindset, and we all have a growth mindset. When the Growth Mindset book came out and I read it, I reflected on my own life. And then I set a goal, a couple of goals actually. I set some career goals, Chris. I said, I'm going to employ the growth mindset and I'm going to change how I teach the camera unit in my class. I'm going to get rid of these simple beginner point and shoot cameras and I'm going to get DSLRs with a variety of lenses and I'm going to teach all of my students how to be DSLR certified, how to shoot video with DSLRs. And to understand why you use certain lenses and when and how, right? This is something that I'd previously done for advanced students. So it was kind of a raising the bar. It was a big leap of faith to say I should be able to teach all these kids how to do it. And it worked. It was so rewarding. Now, it didn't work with everybody. So there was a little failure. There was a lot of success, a little failure, but I was able to look at the failures and analyze it and say, why didn't this work with these kids? And then make some adjustments and try again. And the different techniques that I tried helped those kids come up. So that's me in the workplace, right? on a personal level, I set a goal with a growth mindset that I was going to try a different nutritional plan for myself. And I've struggled with weight all my life. I came from a family where food is a central part of the culture. Like the meal together with the family is crucial. And a lot of boys at the table means it's a race to eat your food, because if you don't eat it, the food won't be there. So all these kind of things from my background experience and all this cultural stuff just led to poor nutrition and a lot of weight gain. And I had maxed my weight at 256. And I was able to recognize that that's not healthy. And my doctor was like, you could stay this way, but by the time you're in your 50s, you're going to be a very uncomfortable man. And I, for the sake of myself, for the sake of my wife and my kids, I knew that I needed to do something just to be healthy. It wasn't just about weight loss. It wasn't a number. It was, I wanted to feel more energetic, right? All the reasons why people want to be in better shape. Mm-hmm. So the fixed mindset side of me said, Bill, you've tried diets all your life and they fail. You always bounce back up. You always gain the weight back, right? They fail. You'll fail at this. Those little voices.
Little voice, yep.
Yeah, that's the fixed mindset, right? And it's, or hey, this one diet worked really well. Remember that one time you lost 20 pounds, but you gained it all back, The growth mindset said, well, look, you're right, fixed mindset. Those did fail. But I'm going to try that one that worked before, but I'm going to try a little differently this time. I'm going to give myself a little more forgiveness. Not a lot, okay? So if I'm doing great on my diet plan and then I drink a beer, or I eat, a 12-inch beef sandwich, or I eat a whole pizza by myself, which by the way would not be a problem. I could do that. But if I did that, in the fixed mindset, I would have just given up. Well, I fell off the wagon. Well, I ate some pizza. Guess it's time to go back to the trough, right? And I'd eat all this food and I'd just give up. The growth mindset this time said, no, you can screw up a little bit. I'll forgive you. But the next day, you got to get right back on the path. You got to get back on the path and you got to stay hard. You got to stay focused. So focus was one part of it. Patience was the other. So understand that no matter what you're doing, lifting weights, eating food, trying to make a career change, it doesn't happen overnight. Mm-hmm. You can change your mind with the snap of a finger, but the actual process takes time, right? Just like the saxophone analogy. I can't just go pick up a saxophone and be the best at it. I've got to work at it. I've got to learn it. Anything new that you're trying to do, you have to be patient with yourself. Don't give up. You can't give up. So I had that mindset, that growth mindset, and I said, I'm just going to start eating this way and drinking more water and going for walks, not so much to burn calories, but just to clear my mind, to empty my mind and get some space and, kind of have a holistic approach to it. And, a little bit happened at a time, but then I'd hit these plateaus where I wasn't losing weight and I felt like, and then that fixed mindset came back in. It was like, see, I told you, you're not going to make your goals. Patience, focus. I stayed focused, I stayed patient, and after a couple weeks, a couple more pounds come off, right? Over the course of a year, I lost 40 pounds. And it was life-changing. And by the way, that's not like, I still have another 30 to go for me to be like where medically I should be for my height. But that 40 pounds changed life. I felt better. People noticed it. My self-confidence improved, right? Like all those things. I slept better. My sleep was better. I could take my dog for a walk and not be winded. I could play with my kids and not be exhausted. And you know what, Chris? I had some failures. I've had some obstacles recently. I put back 10 pounds in the last 2 months. May and June. In the last 2 months, I put back 10 pounds. But I'm instead of just giving up, I'm sticking with it and I'm trying some new strategies. I'm drinking more water than I ever have before. I'm going to bed earlier, and I'm finding that going to bed earlier and getting my 8 hours of sleep has changed things tremendously. I've stopped using screens for an hour before I go to bed, like all these little things. And it's helping me to get refocused on the path and to be more patient. And now I understand that like I can get back on this path. I don't have to just throw in the towel and gain 30 pounds back. And since I started refocusing in the last week, I've lost 3 pounds. And it's just patience and focus. But that's another example where, you know, if I had stayed with the fixed mindset, Chris, I'd still be 256 pounds or more. I might just have thrown in the towel. I might be up to whatever. But I said, I can do this. I'm going to be patient. I'm going to be focused. And it took a long time. It took a year. Well, guess what? You know, I've been putting on weight for 25 years. So when you look at
in the
that,
scale of things, it's a very small portion of your life.
right, all my life I've been putting on weight, you know, so 1 year really isn't that bad. And I know if I stay focused, if I stay patient, if I stay on this path, I'll feel better and I'll continue to reach those goals, those milestones. And at that point, it's less about a number, like the exact number that I weigh, and more about how I feel. You know, a couple of my family members have asked, like, well, how low are you trying to go? I go, I don't know. I don't know. You know, medically speaking, if I got down to 180, I know that's great. But if I get down to 195 and I look great and I feel great, fine. Then I just have to be focused and patient, you know. And if I screw up and I have a slice of pizza or, you know, a bucket of fried chicken, okay, you know.
But I think for the viewers to understand and know is the fact that you can make mistakes along the way, whether it's in your career path, your love life, your health, you know, wealth, everything is combined to the way you control your mind, right? So if you're out there struggling with something right now, Bill is a perfect example of all those areas in your life that you can overcome those challenges. And we'll leave a link below to that book that he keeps talking about. I haven't read it myself, but I'm actually really looking forward to reading into that and seeing what it's all about, because that's going on the morals that we're trying to teach you guys. So if you have any questions, put them in the comment below, and happy Motivational Monday.